Welcome to HubSpot Setup Secrets, What Pros Do First. I'm Casey, and this series is all about answering one deceptively tricky question. What do you actually do when you first get into a new HubSpot portal? I've asked a handful of HubSpot pros to come share their real-life approaches because no two admins do it exactly the same, and I'm here to learn right alongside you. Today, I have Ryan Gunn with me. He is a HubSpot pro. How long have you been working in HubSpot, Ryan?
I've been working in HubSpot about 10 years. I think I started in 2015.
2015. So was Sales Hub around? I started in 2017.
Sales Hub, I think, came out pretty shortly after I started. It was just Marketing Hub when I started.
Mm-hmm.
And then they added the free CRM, I think, at Inbound 2016, because that was the first Inbound I went to.
Nice. And I know we were talking on the pre-show about the navigation. So you've seen a lot of navigation changes in your time.
I have navigation changes, font changes. Yeah, it's gone from one hub to 6 now.
Depends who's counting. In the morning show, a lot of times Chris gets upset that Commerce Hub often gets left out. Content Hub also. But so yeah, it depends on who's asking. I try to stay away from saying the major hubs because that can offend people.
I have to do that when I talk about objects because I hate the mini objects, the semi objects like leads or marketing events or stuff like that. Campaigns, my least favorite object that should be a full object.
Everything's an object now, so that can make it hard. Well, the question I usually like to lead with is, why is this question, what do you do first in a HubSpot portal, so hard to answer? Why does everyone have a little bit of a different answer?
I think a big reason for that is because HubSpot has become so configurable and customizable. I mean, it used to be like everybody has pretty much the same setup. Maybe your workflows are different. You've created some custom properties, but like everything else is the same. Now we've got custom objects. We've got all kinds of like coding stuff you can do. There's UI extensions in the CRM. It can truly be like a completely different software from one company to another, which is really great for like mid-market and enterprise functionality. But I think it causes a good amount of confusion for people who are very new to the system, or have like only worked at an SMB that has a pro hub, and then they move to a company that has enterprise, and it's like a whole different animal.
Yeah. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show yet, but I used to say, I still say this, but maybe I should stop, that like those Mac versus PC commercials.
Yeah.
I used to say that like Salesforce is the PC. You can like customize every little inch of it. And HubSpot is more like a Mac where like it works out of the box, but it doesn't always have every layer of customization. But we are getting to a point where I mean, we can rename our objects now. We can create custom objects. Like we're shifting.
I still think that's an apt comparison. You're right that it's like the customization has gone way, way up. But it's still like HubSpot's got such a focus on usability. Like if you compare Salesforce's user interface to HubSpot's, regardless of the features you're looking at, it's way, way easier to pick up on what you're supposed to do with it in HubSpot. And you don't have to be like a data engineer in order to put together a workflow. And then the other part of it that I think is really apt with the Apple to HubSpot comparison is the kind of Apple ecosystem of, you have your MacBook, your iPad, your Apple Watch, your iPhone, and they're all like connected. You can see the messages on everything. That is how I think HubSpot approaches data, like your marketing automation platform, your CRM, your help desk. It's all in the same thing. It shares the same data. You can like really easily have your whole team in there without needing to worry about like, does the data transfer?
Yeah, that is very fair. I got a couple of comments. Salim said that his controversial opinion is because of how sales process went, stakeholders bought a version of HubSpot that doesn't exist out of the box. I feel like this is a very common use case and a very common reason why people like us get invited into HubSpot portals
Yes.
sometimes. Because someone buys HubSpot, the leadership team is expecting, you know, the world. And then their team gets in HubSpot and they have to build the world.
Yeah,
Uh,
and a lot of times, companies don't have someone with really deep HubSpot technical expertise on the team. They have really smart marketers and salespeople, but it is, not everybody has a sales ops team or a rev ops team, and especially if you're like just migrating from one platform to another, and it's the first few months that your company is in HubSpot.
mhm.
Like, unless you have explicitly hired people to make that migration for you, then your team is going to be in learning mode, and it's going to take quite a while to ramp up to the point where you have the level of customization and configuration that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Another question was comparing HubSpot to Zoho. I feel like Zoho is like an app. Like it's not even like
I actually have never used Zoho.
Okay.
It's one of the few tools that like I have truly zero experience with. I don't think I've ever seen a screenshot of Zoho. That's like how little
Oh,
I know about it.
don't bother. No. The last time I used Zoho was years ago, and it was really to do a migration from Zoho to HubSpot. So I will say maybe they've made some updates since I last saw it. It's probably been at least 5 years. But at the time, it just like I said, I feel like Zoho was like an app inside of your iPhone to keep using that comparison. It doesn't like fully solve things. My personal opinion.
That's how I feel about Pardot. It
Yes.
is
Yeah.
like, I think people buy Pardot because Salesforce owns it, and they think, oh, this is going to integrate really well with Salesforce, which we already have. And it turns out that Pardot is just like the stepchild that Salesforce forgot about, and
Which is
it doesn't do any of the things we need it to do.
yeah. All right. Well, Ryan, I know you promised you had some new stuff to bring to the table. So, what do you do when you first get access to a HubSpot portal? Where do you start going?
So because I work in marketing ops, I'm usually supporting a marketing team, or if I'm in more of like a rev ops role, then a larger go-to-market team. I start with the users. So within your user settings, you can see who has what permissions. If someone has like a sales pro seat or service hub, enterprise seat, that kind of thing. You can go into like audit logs and see who is logging in the most, that kind of thing. And then what I think is really important is to actually talk to those people, like set up some one-on-ones, and go have a meeting and just have them like walk through what their day-to-day is, and what properties they use, what objects they're like living in within the CRM. Because what you can uncover in doing that is like, there may be multiple members of the same team that do things very differently, and you're going to start to expose some of the cracks in the process that create friction.
Mm-hmm.
And so just like set up, figure out which users are in the platform the most and doing the most stuff, and then talk to them about what they're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I have recently been setting up my own HubSpot instance, and I'm using tools that I've been using HubSpot since 2017, but I'm suddenly like using tools that I've never used before. I'm doing things I've never done, um, because I'm using my HubSpot as a user, not as an admin. And there's such a different role there. And I think it is really important to understand how the team is currently using it. Um, and they may not be using it with like best practices.
Yeah.
Um, but also understanding why they're using it in that way, whether that's they didn't know there's an easier way to create contacts, they didn't know, or have they tried that and it hasn't worked? Because what hear out of frustration, especially when talking to like sales reps using HubSpot, is I'm like, hey, just connect the extension. And they're like, stop telling me that. HubSpot's told me that 10 times. The extension doesn't work because of XYZ. Maybe we're on Outlook, maybe whatever the case is. But I think talking to people is such an important first step. And I don't like, usually in my position, I find that like leadership is hiring me. Um, and so I'm not always getting the like on the ground
Yeah.
feedback. So I think
That's so critical, is like, because you're right. It's always the, the CMO, the CRO, the VP of something that is hiring you. It is not, an AE is not going to hire a HubSpot consultant. And they are the ones that are on the ground. They're the ones that are having to deal with the like data validation rules in the deal pipeline. And if you talk to them and ask them, not only what are you doing day to day, but like, what are your biggest frustrations within HubSpot? What do you feel like should work better but doesn't? What are the manual processes that you're doing? It is astounding the amount of like mid-market and enterprise level companies that are still using spreadsheets for a ton of stuff. And if you can get that stuff out of a spreadsheet and into HubSpot and automated, you are going to save like so much stress, so much time. You can like add full-time employees worth of productivity back into the company.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we're looking at these as like consultants, but I mean, this is also true if you're a new hire or you're not a new hire and you have been the kind of, whether accidental or on purpose, HubSpot admin. Um, talking to the other users of HubSpot is so important. If your company's new to HubSpot, like even talking about the current workflows that they're using that could potentially be replaced with HubSpot, it's applicable. It's applicable for everyone.
Another trick I like to use for like identifying who you should talk to is looking at who's creating properties. You can look and see who's got super admin position or permissions, but so often it's like everybody has super admin permissions, which is a nightmare in itself. But if you're looking at who is creating properties, that or workflows is another great example. Those are two things that are like enormous indicators of these are the power users. These are the people who are making decisions about how processes work within HubSpot. And they're the ones who are going to like either have the vision or be the ones that like somebody is telling them the vision and they are duct taping stuff together to try and make it work.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I know you can even like filter in, if you go to properties, you can filter, you can remove the HubSpot created properties, and that sometimes that clouds things up. But really, you could even use that drop down list, and you'd be able to see the users that are creating properties. The creation of properties management is something I have nightmares about. So
that's probably like the next step that I would recommend when getting into a new HubSpot portal is like really explore that properties list. Because there's so much information you can get. You can see, how often they're used in workflows and reports and all kinds of other stuff. So you can have a better understanding of like, okay, these are probably the most important properties to the team. But then sometimes you'll also uncover stuff that like they have 3 different industry properties and there's like a bunch of records that have each of them, but no overlap. So clearly different people are using different industry properties. And you can start, that's another, way you can start to identify those friction points and those problems that you can solve and create a lot more clarity.
Yeah, I love the industry use this one is
yeah. or all of the like do not use
don't use old. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to see in a portal. I think you commented on a post I saw yesterday about workflows and the number of workflows like in a portal and how that can be. I know you mentioned like who's creating the workflows, but also the volume of workflows can be kind of a sign of a sign of what is happening.
Yeah. Looking at the number, I mean, most companies have a ton of workflows, and I would guess that 20% plus probably don't need to be active. That's probably a pretty conservative number, but it's amazing how often companies will like change the processes that they're using without turning off automations that support those processes. So suddenly you've got, if you're doing some data cleanup, there's a workflow coming right behind you, undoing all of that work because it's from, some legacy process that you didn't know about that's still turned on.
Yeah.
But yeah, going through and looking at like, okay, when was the last time this was edited? Again, looking at like the properties that are used in it and like, are they properties that the company is actively using? That those are all good ways to start to identify things that may be causing absolute chaos in your CRM that you can easily stop with just the push of a button.
Because one of the things I find really overwhelming when I go into a new HubSpot is the amount of noise, like the number of properties, the number of workflows. And I do sometimes like get in there and I'm just like, blah, like, so I think anything you can identify that like is old that maybe you can turn off, if something hasn't had anyone enrolled in it in 2 years, then maybe we just turn it off and just like push it over to the side.
Yeah, it is. I like to call it the spaghetti monster because it feels like, workflows layered on workflows, layered on workflows and properties and associations and all this stuff that's like interconnected that you kind of have to untangle if you want to clean it up. I mean, I'm sure if you've ever tried to delete a property that's being used in 100 places, like untangling that, going and like trying to delete a workflow, and then you realize you can't delete that because it's involved in something else, and you can't archive this because it's tied to that. Deleting a single property could take you hours. But that's I think the hard, important work that needs to get done if you do want to have some semblance of order within HubSpot.
Yeah, it truly can be a nightmare.
It's easier if you do it regularly. Like, of course, in the hypothetical that is this show, that you're just coming into a HubSpot portal fresh, which probably means it hasn't been done in a while. But like, if one of the first things you do is a big data cleanup, the second thing you should do is create a schedule to do that regularly. And then it's going to be a lot easier. You're going to have to untangle a lot less because you've been keeping up with it.
Yeah. I just saw a post in Sprocketeers yesterday about like checklists, like data cleaning checklists. And I've been like kind of starting to put one together. A lot of times I find when I go into a new HubSpot portal, I give like a list of like, these are all the nice things that we should do. And then like, here is the things that we can reasonably do quickly. And then here are the things that, we'd like to do.
Yeah. And then there's like a very small list of things that like, we have to do this or the business will end in 6 months.
Or just turn HubSpot off and just start with a new one.
I have heard companies like ask that question, like, can we just turn it off and start fresh? That came through in a contact us request at Aptitude 8 was like, can you guys help us just delete our account and start fresh?
So I haven't heard that specific request, but I've heard similar ones. I can feel that. I can feel that.
Yeah, we messed it up so bad. It's the nuclear option.
Yeah. Okay, so we've looked at users. We've looked at users that have created properties. We've looked at users that have created workflows. And we're starting to interview. We're asking how they're using, what their day-to-day looks like. I like to like watch them use HubSpot, like truly like see what buttons they're clicking. Anything else that you do off the bat, or are those your big three?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking to people, then as important as it is to talk to the end users who are actually in it and doing the thing, we also need to talk to leadership, because they're the ones driving the ship. They're the ones saying like, this is how things should be done. And having both of those perspectives, you're going to see the disconnects. You're going to understand like, okay, leadership really like either thinks this is the way things are working now, or thinks this is how they should be working. And what we have in HubSpot and what our end users are doing does not support that vision.
Yeah, I do think often there's a misalignment with leadership and with the people in HubSpot. And so sometimes that's why it's nice to either be the new person or the outside person, and you're able to just like be like, okay, users are saying this, leadership's saying this, where's the middle?
Yeah, I think that goes not just between users and leadership, but between departments. Marketing and sales, notoriously misaligned. But there are, you can help create that alignment, especially if both teams are in HubSpot. That's a big step forward. Having a separate map in CRM is like a big problem for misalignment, because nobody trusts each other's reporting. There's limited visibility. When everybody's in HubSpot, it helps, at least get you on the same page on like, this is the system, this is the data that we have access to. But in doing those interviews, you will find some of those misalignments, and you can specifically ask about them. You can ask, what are the challenges sales feels with marketing, vice versa. It's really, I think this whole interview process is like, it's understanding what's going on in the CRM, but it's also understanding the people dynamics and where that friction is.
Yeah. Somebody else said that culture problems shouldn't be your problem to fix as a RevOps consultant. I totally agree. But sometimes you can highlight them, and you can work with the team to potentially get people a little closer aligned. And to your point, if everyone's in HubSpot, that a lot of times makes it easier.
Yeah, I agree that fixing culture is not your job. However, RevOps, when it's set up correctly in a business, can serve as like an objective third party that is looking at data, and you can you can't solve the culture problem, but you can at least point to like objective truth and say, what sales is saying is actually accurate based on this thing. They are actually following up with marketing leads, and marketing leads are just not high quality, or whatever it is that you're uncovering. Especially if the business is set up where like RevOps reports up to the CEO or the COO, and not up to one of those departments. A lot of times RevOps reports up to sales, and I think that creates some conflicts of interest. But you're not going to fix the culture problem. You can, through process and through reporting and data, actually create some like at least sense of what is accurate.
Yeah. As long as you have access to the data, a lot of times you can at least start to figure some things out.
Yeah.
Another question from Caroline. At what point do you continue to hack HubSpot for a client versus saying this is how HubSpot is built to function? This is not how HubSpot's built to function.
It really depends on the use case. I mean, a lot of companies, especially if they're going like all in on HubSpot, want everything to be in there. And like Carolyn said, it's just some stuff HubSpot is not good for. I think project management is one of those things. I've had clients that like really want to build out their project management within HubSpot using tasks. And I tell them that's going to be a nightmare because HubSpot doesn't do like subtasks or anything like that. It's be really difficult to build out something. It's going to be way easier to just integrate a tool. And I think that's kind of, you have to look at, are there softwares out there that can do the same thing that you can easily integrate? If there are, like, what is the cost of that? Because building out something in HubSpot is expensive. If you have people on your team who can do it, maybe you're not spending any additional money, but you're spending time that they could be working on something else. So cost is a factor. How well it integrates is a factor. And then just like truly the capabilities of HubSpot. You are not going to build out robust project management in HubSpot, no matter how hard you work.
Yeah, I think tasks are a great example of like when it's just not going to be a project management tool.
Yeah, it's good for simple, like, follow up on this, but it is not like, let's break down a whole project and everything we need to do for it.
Yeah. And one of my favorite answers is HubSpot is not great at that at this point in time.
Not now.
Not now. Maybe in the future, but right now, it's not the best option to just hack your way necessarily to having a bunch of tasks for your project management. But maybe soon, who knows?
I think that's another area where, like, talking to them and understanding not just, what they want to be built, but why they want it to be built, what it's solving. Because a lot of times people think they want a solution when really they have a problem that could be solved some other way. And I'd like, having worked a lot in marketing attribution, so many times people have come to me and been like, I want to build out like robust multi-touch attribution. And I look at their company and they have like 5 marketers and 1 ops person. And I'm like, no, you do not want to build out multi-touch attribution. You want to build out something that you can easily maintain and that like kind of runs on its own. You don't want to have to deal with like the enormous headache that is building a tracking link for every single thing that you ever publish.
Yeah. That is fair. I had an old creative director at the agency I worked at who said you have to ask why at least 3 times. So, why do you want that? Why do you want to track multi-touch attribution? Why do you need to know every single touch point along the way? Trying to get to really it from there.
There's almost always a simpler way.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, is there any final thoughts? Anything we missed on your list?
I don't think so. Just, talk to your people, figure out what's really going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think oftentimes, especially in this like virtual world we live in, it can be easy to just say, oh, I'll just look, I'll just figure it out. I don't need to talk to a person. But I think you can gain so much value from really getting to know.
Yeah, I totally know. And this is coming from an introvert. I don't like talking to people that much, but I think it's important.
Yeah. All right, that's a wrap on today's HubSpot Setup Secrets. Huge thanks to Ryan for sharing your go-to moves and behind-the-scenes thinking. Check out his new newsletter, Hubsessed. We'll drop it in the comments here as well. It has lots of tips and tools inside of HubSpot, and maybe there will be a user management admin.
I've not written next week's newsletter, so that might be it.
Yeah, I'll send you the transcript. Just there you go. If you have any tips of your own or want to be on a future stream, shoot me a DM and I will see you guys next time.